Welcome back to Square Off. For more than a decade, the Phoenix communities most served by the police department have pushed for independent oversight of its officers. Now the city has it. Roger Smith is the new director of the Office of Accountability and Transparency, better known as OAT. Smith is the first city employee with the authority to lead independent investigations of alleged police misconduct. Smith and I talked last week about what residents should expect from his office and why he's suited to this role. We started with another high-profile case of alleged police abuse that was caught on camera. The video is tough to watch. An officer repeatedly punching a 13-year-old girl. Police say the girl had struck the officer first.
It's always disturbing to me when you have an interaction that doesn't end positively. In this situation, you had force used, and that force was used under unpleasant circumstances, and it was force that was used against a 13-year-old. That's terrible, always, when you have a situation like that. But we can be thankful that nobody was seriously hurt, that we don't have anything worse than that, right? Because we've seen situations where you have unknown medical conditions or other things involved, and you end up with an even greater tragedy. So I'm grateful that didn't happen.
Roger Smith has been on the job just 2 months. He's still a one-man band at OAT, but he's planning to hire about 14 staffers. Investigations of new cases might not start for 6 more months. Here's how they would get going.
Well, the first step would happen relatively quickly. So the first thing is we look at this incident right away and say, does this fall within OAT jurisdiction? We know in this situation, it falls directly within our discretionary jurisdiction. But if you had a more serious injury result from this, it would fall within our mandatory jurisdiction as well. Either way, what we would have to do then is to basically inform the city manager, the police chief, and when it comes into existence, the Civilian Review Board, of what we intended to do with that case. And we would essentially announce whether we're going to investigate ourselves, whether we're going to monitor PSB's investigation, or whether we're going to participate in PSB's investigation. So that would be the announcement we'd make, and we'd make that announcement relatively quickly.
When Smith says PSB, he's referring to the police department's Professional Standards Bureau that handles these kinds of investigations. Smith is a 52-year-old former prosecutor who's devoted his career to holding police accountable. He led the Office of Professional Standards in Cleveland. Before that, he worked in New York City, handling civilian complaints against police.
Before all of that, I was an African-American male engaging with police officers when I was a preteen and also when I was a teenager.
And what were those experiences like?
Well, I would get stopped for things that I had previously been doing that weren't causing any issues or any problems when I was a preteen, 12, 11, 10, when I was a smaller kid. Those same things started getting me stopped as I got older. So when I'm 13, 14, 15 years old, and I'm on my way to the store, I started getting stopped and dealing with police that way. I've been forced to deal with this from both sides. First, professionally, I've dealt with it from the standpoint of being a prosecutor, also investigating police officers. But I know what it's like to be stopped. I know what it's like to be searched. I know what it's like to be frisked and, generally speaking, accused of things by officers. So I've seen this issue from all sides.
Smith is taking on the job of police oversight as Chief Jerry Williams and her department are being investigated by the U.S. Department of Justice. Smith told me a lot of work needs to be done to build what he calls an enduring positive relationship between police and the communities they serve.
The goal that everybody should have is to create that enduring positive relationship. We see evidence that that relationship is there in some situations, but we also see evidence that it's not there in other situations.
How much work has to be done to make that a positive relationship?
A lot of work, a lot of work. And not just for the one incident. you've got to identify patterns in behavior. You've got to be vigilant about things like the language that's used during the course of incidents to ensure that provocative things aren't unnecessarily being said. You really have to be vigilant about the whole process if you want to get it right and if you want people to believe you're getting it